Hey, what's up guys? So in this video, we're going to take a look at all of the new and recently updated radar detectors, as well as detectors that have been recently announced, and different supply chain issues and how things are looking overall with actually buying any of these radar detectors in the first place. Now, the last time I did a video like this was back in September of 2021, and since then we've had a lot of changes. We've had new detectors come out, a lot of updates. We've had new detectors getting announced. I had a baby, and so I've been busy actually taking my parental leave, and so I'm getting back into things. And so here we are now in 2022. And so let's just go ahead and take a look at everything that's happened over the past couple months. Now, there's a lot to cover here in this video, so down in the video description, you're going to find a lot of additional information. Things like links to all the detectors that I talk about, links to where you can read more about any of the different firmware updates, to where you can download the updates, purchase the detectors, learn about a lot of these changes, or join into the discussion about anything that we talk about here in this video. So a bunch more information down for you in the video description. So starting right off, let's go ahead and begin with the Uniden R8. This is probably one of the most exciting things that have been announced recently, and it's basically an upgraded version of the Uniden R7. It's a lot like the R7, but it's got a redesigned case, even longer range, plus a bunch of new features that have been added to the detector. It's not available yet. It was just announced back at CES, and Uniden is saying it's going to retail for $699, and that they're expecting for it to launch sometime around April, barring any weird supply chain issue stuff. I'm going to be doing a full review of the detector as we get a little bit closer to launch. I still have more testing to do with the detector and whatnot, so make sure you subscribe for that. But I already have a video actually kind of introducing the detector and going over all the new changes and improvements, especially compared to the R7. Additionally, Uniden has released the new R4, which is basically an upgraded version of the R3, with a lot of the same changes, including an updated case design, even longer range with the dual LNA design, plus a bunch of new features added on. This detector, it's available now, and it retails for $449. The R7 has had a number of different firmware updates as well. We had firmware version 1.40, which kind of unifies the different firmware versions for both the original hardware version and the newer hardware version. With the R7, they actually had to change some of the internal components just due to the fact that they couldn't get certain chips, supply chain issues, and so they did a hardware switch. The changes shouldn't actually affect performance, but there are some changes, and so there's now a new hardware version. That's what firmware 1.40 was. And then firmware version 1.41, from what I understand, is basically just a small change with some additional bug fixes. And then Uniden's R series update software has been improved as well. Now when you plug in your Uniden detector, it can automatically read the firmware version, go out and check for newer firmware versions without you having to go to Uniden's website and download it manually and load it into the program. And so now the detector software itself can just go check for updates, download it for you, and automatically load it into the detector. And so the update process has been significantly improved with this new update software, and it's available now for both Windows and for Mac. Next, the Uniden DFR9 has a firmware update. It's firmware version 1.04. It's a little bit weird when you go to Uniden's website to try and find it. It's not labeled as 1.04. It's actually labeled as the 2021-10.05 file, but that's where you can find it. There's not really too much with this update. It's just a quick update for the speed cam alerts. Some of you guys have been asking about the Uniden DFR6 and 7. Those detectors have been officially discontinued. You can still find them on Amazon from people who are basically asking way too much money for the detectors, and so they're not selling. And so the only ones you'll really still see online are from the ones that aren't selling because people are significantly overcharging for the detectors. But yes, those detectors have been discontinued, and now the DFR 8 and 9 have been the detectors that come out to replace the 6 and 7. Uniden's also working on the custom installed R9, which I've done a video on before. We've got some FCC information about it, but no information about the detector, launch dates, any of that kind of stuff yet. But if you go take a look at Uniden's website, you'll actually see that they have some downloads available for the R9, including updates for the red light camera GPS database for the detector. And so it looks like they're continuing to work on it, but there's no updates otherwise regarding their custom installed detector, the R9, or the laser jammers that they're going to want to add to it. I've done a whole video in the past about what we know about the R9, so if you haven't checked it out and you're curious, you can take a look at that video as well. Again, link down in the video description, just like, well, everything else that I talk about here in this video. And then finally, the last thing to mention about Uniden is they actually bought out Attowave, who is a South Korean radar detector manufacturer. Now, Attowave actually manufactures detectors for many different brands, including Uniden, Radenso, Net Radar, K40, Rocky Mountain Radar, and others. Like, they make detectors for a lot of different companies. And so Uniden actually bought this company because, well, Attowave makes all the detectors for Uniden, and so now Uniden owns it. So that's going to be really interesting to watch over time. I don't know how it's going to affect things, especially for Uniden and the other brands, and how it's going to change the dynamics there. And so I guess maybe just something to watch over time. Next, let's move on and take a look at Radenso. So Radenso has released an update for the DS1. The latest firmware update available now is firmware version 1.07. I've got a whole article about this on my website going over all the improvements, and you'll find things like improved false alert filtering, GATSO detection, Bluetooth has now been enabled, so you can pair it with different apps, and there's a bunch of new features that have been added as well. Additionally, Radenso has released their update software for not only Windows, but also for Mac. So those of you guys who are also Mac users can now update natively on your Macs. I've noticed the DS1 has been out of stock for quite a while, but checking right now, just while shooting this video, it looks like it's actually back in stock in Radenso's website. Now, with Bluetooth being activated in the DS1, Radenso has also released their own app for the DS1. It's called Radenso Nexus. This app is Android only currently, and they're also working on an iOS version of the app as well for iPhone users. And basically with this app, it's going to allow you to do things like go in and change settings on your DS1. It's going to allow you to actually update the detector from your phone, so you don't have to plug it into the computer. That's definitely convenient. And it's also going to give you a very basic kind of alert screen to use while driving. But realistically, I think it's just mostly useful for changing settings in your detector with your phone or for updating the detector. I think I'm actually going to do a whole video just on Radenso Nexus to kind of run through the different settings and features, and that way you can take a look at what it's like. But again, it's currently available for Android only, and it's something that they're working on for iOS as well. And speaking of different apps for the DS1, Highway Radar also supports the DS1 as well, and I actually like using Highway Radar better while driving. It does a lot of the same stuff, including allowing you to change settings on the detector. I think the alert display is a little bit better while driving. I like some of the extra features, like the way you can customize the lockouts and stuff. I'm thinking about doing a video just on that as well. There's a couple quirks that I've noticed just while driving around using it. But yeah, that could be something to take a closer look at as well. And so again, if you're an Android user, unfortunately not available for iOS, you can also take a look at Highway Radar and integrate it with your DS1. Now, Highway Radar has a ton of different features, and there's decent learning curve with the app. There's actually a book that's available now that goes over and explains all the different features in the app. It's a really useful read. I was actually spending a lot of time when I was kind of, bouncing the newborn. I had him in one hand, calming him to sleep and shushing him at 3 in the morning, and I'm sitting here reading the app or the book on my phone like this. And so it's a pretty good read. I'll link to it in the video description as well if you'd like to learn more about Highway Radar and all the different features and how it works. Next, I know a lot of you guys have been asking about Theia. What's the story with Theia? Why isn't it out yet? Radenso's been posting about it on the forums. Basically, supply chain issues. They can't get some of the parts, especially the Xilinx FPGA. That one, it seems like they just can't get it all right now. So that's why Theia is basically just not going anywhere. And so yeah, that's the story with that one. Every detector uses different parts. Radenso is continuing to be able to produce things like the Pro M and the DS1 because they can get parts for that detector. But the FPGA that powers Theia, unfortunately, they can't get that one right now. And interestingly, there's other people on the forums who their companies also rely on the same Xilinx Spartan 7 FPGAs, and they're reporting that with their companies, which are huge companies, way bigger than something like Radenso, they're not able to acquire these FPGAs either. And this whole supply chain thing has been kind of wild. I've been seeing some cars that have just basically stopped production or shipping without certain features because they can't get the chips for them. And so it seems to affect different companies and different products differently depending on if they can get those specific components. But yeah, that seems to be the story with Theia at this point. So yeah, definitely a detector that I'm hopeful comes out someday, that I'm definitely excited about. Sounds really cool in theory, but obviously they got to get the parts to be able to build it. So that's the story on that one. Next, taking a look at Escort, there's the Redline 360C. That one is basically unavailable right now. You can't buy it anymore. It's not even available on back order. Escort doesn't know when they're going to be getting more in, and so if you go to their website, they have a waiting list now to where you can get notified next time they have them in. They've actually contacted me and asked me to stop linking to the Redline 360C and actually remove all the links on my videos on my website because, well, they can't get them anymore right now, and they're not going to be able to sell them. So they're like, can you stop sending people to our website? So that I think is kind of weird. I'm not here to necessarily sell you detectors. I'm here to rate and review and compare them, right? To test them out. So whether you can buy it or not, I still want to talk about how they perform. And so I haven't removed it from my website, but I've just been putting up disclaimers of hey, you can't get them right now due to the part shortages. So that's the story with that. And a quick note about that. Hey, Vortex here in video editing mode. As I'm sitting here actually editing this video for you guys, it looks like the Redline 360C just came back in stock on Escort's website. I sent out a notification on Facebook, on Twitter, and via my email newsletter as well. So I know those of you guys who saw that, well, you got the notification in time. I don't know if by the time I get this video finished, editing actually takes a lot of time. By the time I get this video finished, I don't know if the detector is still going to be available. You can always check, of course. But just wanted to quickly mention that it looks like the Redline 360C is at least occasionally coming back in stock, even though it's been out of stock for quite a while now. I know some people have actually been looking into the Escort MaxCam as an alternative, or maybe the Max 360C, which has worse performance. The MaxCam, I've been thinking about doing an updated video on that, specifically because of the fact that the Drive Smarter app has been updated, and that's actually where most of the issues are. The MaxCam itself is a pretty good radar detector, and a lot of people are buying it, and they're like, well, I actually like the MaxCam. Drive Smarter, the app, has been updated, and so for some people, they're reporting that now these speed limits will actually display properly over Wi-Fi on the face of the detector. It took me a fair amount of trial and error and troubleshooting, plus waiting for Escort servers to get fixed, but it looks like I was able to get it working as well. I'll put a link in the video description to the full discussion in case you want to make sure that you've got the feature working as well. I think really if you just kind of use Drive Smarter for the initial setup to like configure your detector and get the Wi-Fi stuff set up, and then just don't use the app anymore, well, you've actually got a pretty good radar detector. So I'm thinking about doing a video talking about that one as well, but that's kind of the current status of the MaxCam 360C. There's also been some reports of people having GPS accuracy issues where it displays the incorrect speeds, a little bit too slow or too fast, I forget which, but the speeds are not quite accurate displayed on the face of the detector. Next, moving on to Valentine, the latest update for that is version 4.1027. Valentine says that with this update, they've improved the sensitivity of the detector on Ka band, specifically for 33.8, 34.7, and 35.5, which are the main three frequency ranges on Ka where police operate radar. A number of people have been doing testing with this newer firmware and have indeed been able to confirm that the performance has improved with this new update. Additionally, Valentine says that with this new update, they've reduced some of the Ka falses that you may get when you're near a BSM card that's transmitting K-band, but it could trigger a Ka false on your detector. That said, a number of people have actually been reporting increased Ka falses overall, myself included, with this latest update, so something to be aware of. And then the last thing, this update actually allows different apps to now remotely control the volume of the detector, both the traditional volume and the muted volume of the detector. So a lot of the newer apps have been updated to be able to control the volume of the detector, which is pretty cool. And then as far as availability for the V1, typically when you go look on Valentine's website, it'll be on back order, but Valentine seems to be pretty good about acquiring new detectors and getting more inventory, and so they're usually back ordered for just a few weeks or so, and then your detector will ship out after that. Additionally, due to the issues with getting detectors in the first place, they've actually temporarily stopped their upgrade program. So if you want to send your older V1 in for an upgrade and trade it in towards a new one, they've actually stopped that program for a little while, and so currently the only option is to actually just go and buy a V1 direct off their website. I would assume that once the supply chain stuff kind of eases up a little bit and they're able to start getting detectors in more regularly, they'll probably reopen the upgrade program, but right now it's currently disabled. Next, taking a look at the ALP, it's received a firmware update. This new update is version 5.6.7/9.3, and ALP says that there's some under-the-hood improvements, plus some laser support and compatibility improvements. So basically, they're not really saying any details as far as what's going on, but they've improved the laser jamming capabilities. Now, ALP used to be a lot more specific and detailed about what's included in the updates, including things like, we've upgraded the jamming capabilities to support the new stalker guns that have come out, but then the competition would see that and they would be like, oh, there's an update, I need to go out and get the gun and update my jammer as well. And so for competitive reasons, ALP no longer gives the details on exactly new guns that are supported and that kind of stuff. And so now when you go take a look at the updates, they'll just give you something generic of like, oh, we've improved the laser support or something like that. So now they don't really give a bunch of details, and that's actually why. Something else to note, it also looks like the Spectre, the radar detector detectors, those are being discontinued. It looks like they've reached end of life. And according to Stalker Radar, who sells the Spectre, yeah, they've confirmed that it looks like the Spectres are dead, so now they're going to be going the way of the VG2. And so I don't know how long they're going to continue to be available, and the existing copies will remain in service and stuff, but that's something to be seen. Will another radar detector come out? I don't know. I mean, this is such a small niche market. I mean, radar detectors is a tiny market, so maybe the demand isn't there. Maybe, again, supply chain stuff. I don't know what the cause is for this kind of stuff, but yeah, it looks like, as far as I can tell, Spectres are actually being discontinued, so yeah. Next, there's also something to note about those of you guys who hardwire specifically into C8 Corvettes, and specifically for using a MirrorTap. It looks like there's been some issues with the MirrorTaps, which actually tap into the back of your powered rearview mirror to get power for your detector. In C8 Corvettes, that extra power draw can actually start to damage your vehicle and cause damage specifically to the side mirrors of the vehicles. I don't know if this issue affects other GM vehicles as well. So far, they're being reported in the C8 Corvettes. If you have more information, let me know down in the video description. But for those of you guys who are running a radar detector on a Corvette, maybe you want to stick to a traditional hardwire or use a cigarette lighter or something. Avoid using the MirrorTap on that specific vehicle. And then finally, the last thing to mention real quick, Android 12 has actually broken compatibility with a lot of different apps. Some of the stuff has changed under the hood, and so certain apps like your TMG app or your Blackview app, a number of them have actually kind of broken, and so a lot of the manufacturers are having to actually update their apps to support the new changes that have been implemented with Android 12. And so just something to be aware of if you've upgraded over the past couple months. You probably are aware of this when you see apps start breaking and you're having to update. But yeah, a number of manufacturers have actually started having to update their apps accordingly. I don't think everybody has finished it. Some of them seem to still be working on it, but just something to be aware of for those of you guys who run Android. And so, yeah, that's just kind of a quick run through / summary of new radar detectors, upcoming detectors, recently updated detectors, apps, radar detector detectors and jammers and all this kind of stuff. So just a quick run through of how things have been updated over the past couple months. And so, yeah, for more information, I'll kind of keep you guys updated over time, and then every so often we'll do a big kind of compilation videos like this to cover everything and anything that I might have missed in individual videos. And so that's it for now. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you're all doing great, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.